3D Grumpy Acrylic Nail Art Tutorial by Hotpinkzebrapolish.
Hi everyone! In today's video I'm going to do the second video in my Care Bear series, and this one is going to be for Grumpy Bear, which is really cute. I just like that, there's one that's not quite so cheerful and happy. So I hope you like this one as much as I do, and don't forget to click subscribe to see all my future videos as well.
I'm going to begin with a very thin gradient of a medium blue acrylic, a light blue acrylic to a medium blue acrylic. So there's the light blue, and it is an almost white light blue. It's just super pale and super kind of very sunny, like the peak of the afternoon, and then a slightly darker blue at the tip, and blend those two together so that there's just a nice fade from one shade to the other. And then after those are nicely blended, then I'm going to take an off-white, it's like a shimmery pearlescent white, and I'm going to sculpt some fluffy clouds with that color. So the reason I use that instead of just a white is because I wanted the white bellies of all of my Care Bears and the white snouts to really show up as a very vibrant contrast to the background. And having that slight shimmeriness to the clouds makes the bears just stand up a little bit better. Then I'm going to encapsulate the nail with a layer of clear acrylic to make sure that those clouds are well protected against the filing that we're going to do in a moment. So here's the second bead of clear acrylic over the cuticle area, and blend that down and sculpt in the apex at this particular stage of the process. There's the next bead, just kind of blending it all together. And then I'm going to file the nail into shape with my e-file. If you don't prefer to use an e-file and you'd rather use a hand file, go for it. This is kind of a pick your poison sort of a situation, and whatever is your favorite method, you can definitely go for it. So now with my same medium blue color that I used on the tip of the nail, it just was the best one for this series. I'm going to use that color to sculpt Grumpy. So I've got that almost pear-shaped head sculpted in place, and then I'm going to add that nice rounded belly for his body. And when you're working with this acrylic, you can do little bit by little bit and kind of pat it out, and don't rush the process with any of these characters because it's not going to speed it up. So don't try to sculpt the whole face in one section or put down a huge bead of blue acrylic and then start to try to separate it out. There's just not time for it, and it'll end up looking so much nicer if you give yourself enough time to do each piece on its own. So there's a couple little bits of blue acrylic that are nice and round for his cheeks. I'm going to add the little ears with that blue. The great thing is, even though I did use this same blue color in the background as I'm doing in the foreground, which normally is kind of a huge no-no because you don't want there to be any confusion about what's background and what's foreground, is that with this particular character and the fact that there's the gradient, the most important part of any character is their face, and his face isn't against the same color as the background, so that definitely helps the process a little bit. The other thing is Grumpy will be outlined in the end, so that also helps distinguish foreground from background. So if you are worried about that and you have the same situation as I did, where there's only so many blues in your collection and you just had to find the ones that worked the best for this case, it's okay because it'll be easy enough to see in the end. And I actually kind of like the monochromatic look too, so it's up to you. But there's the nice little white belly, and then I'm going to start adding his legs. So Grumpy has his arms crossed the way that I sculpted him, and his legs are out a little bit different than the other characters are. So we've got the first leg sculpted, and you'll see what I mean in a moment. Kind of tuck his leg in a little bit. It's kind of like he's almost mid-jump or something. So there's the one leg with the knee bent, and here's the second one. Had a little bit more acrylic to that. I didn't grab quite enough. It's so funny, I use so many different brands of acrylic, and they each have a little bit different of a monomer requirement, that when I'm not really thinking about it and focusing on how much monomer I have in my brush, it's a little bit more difficult to control how big the size of your acrylic bead is. So if you're just starting out, or you've only used one brand of acrylic because it's what's, accessible to you in wherever it is that you live, or it's just what you've always bought because it's convenient for one reason or another, if you do go to switch brands, you may find that there's kind of a new learning curve with it, and you have to rediscover your liquid to powder ratio. And then if you're somebody like me that has 13 different brands of acrylic that you use on the regular, it gets really confusing because you have to constantly switch how you're using it. So it's just one of those funny things. And I know that there's certain brands that I just know in my collection that take more or less. Like, for instance, I know that my Young Nails color acrylics take a much smaller amount of monomer to get a big bead than, say, my Koopa. They're Tri-Tech acrylics take so much monomer. So yeah, in general though, you guys, I wouldn't recommend the Koopa Tri-Tech acrylics. Is that what they're called? Anyways, the Koopa color acrylics or dipping powders, they're just not my favorite. I do have a bunch of them because I don't know, I love acrylic powder, and if I see a color I think is cool, I'll pick it up. But they definitely have the color bleed problem, and it takes so much monomer that you go through monomer way too quick. In general, otherwise though, I do like them. It's just the whole monomer hogging situation, not ideal. But now I'm going to take some blue paint, and I'm going to do all the outlines on my little grumpy bear. So I've got a medium blue, or like a classic true blue, a primary blue, and I'm going to be doing his outlines with that. And because that one foot is sticking up and you can see the bottom, you get to add his little toe beans. Melody would be so impressed that I got to use the term toe beans in a video. She loves kitty cat toe beans, and anytime any of our cats show her their toe beans, she gets so excited and she does a little happy dance. But got the cloud on the belly, and then the little blue raindrops on the belly, outlining the facial features. Add little outlines on his snout, cheeks, a little blue heart nose, a tiny little kind of grumpy looking smile, different eye outlines, adding all those details. If the eye outlines get a little out of hand because they get too big or something, in this particular circumstance, it's not the end of the world, because you do still fill them in with white, and as long as your white shapes are pretty much where they need to be, if the blue outlines are a little too big or something, it doesn't really make any difference. Add a little bit of white in the ears, and I also added the little red hearts in the rain cloud belly. And then I'm going to take a tiny bit of black on the eyes and add the black pupils and the smallest little outline. The other thing you can do with these bears, if you want, is you can take a pale version of their color, so a very light blue in this case, and add a couple highlights on him here and there, and then apply a layer of gel sealer over the background to make sure that it is nice and shiny, and then some matte top coat over the grumpy bear. That's another thing that'll help distinguish from foreground to background and make the design just a little easier to understand. I am so in love with this series. I think they're just so cheerful and cute, and I don't know, it's something to give a smile. So I hope you guys like it as much as I do, and please share any recreations with me on Facebook or Instagram. I'd love to see them, and I will see you next time. Bye!